Take the inventory and learn where their gifts are. What's even better is 50% of the respondents said that they took a spiritual inventory and it confirmed what they already knew, and they're using the gift right now in the service of the church. We had an additional almost 17% of respondents who said they now know, or they know where God has gifted me. They're willing to put the gift to use, and please contact me. And we've given those individuals to the chairman of deacons. And as we were talking about throughout the past few weeks, there are some folks who honestly were not ready to make this kind of commitment or to take the survey, and that's perfectly fine, because young believers need to be encouraged and mentored before they're put into a position of leadership and have responsibilities thrust upon them. So if that's you, that's perfectly fine. Or if you didn't take a survey, but that still is you, that still is perfectly fine. I'm going to encourage you to find a spiritually mature believer that you can see that there's light and hope in that person. And you can ask them, please help me to find what my gifts are, encourage me, and build me up so that I can improve it. Because we're all on a walk with the Lord, and we're at different places. So there's nothing wrong with knowing where I'm here in my walk, and you may be up there, but can you help me to catch up? That's perfectly fine. And without any further ado, Dr. John Preston and Miss Kathy Joslin both hail from Sevierville, Tennessee. You may know that they were high school sweethearts, and that Pastor John retired from the Air Force. And some of you might not know that before he was a Zoomie, he actually was a Marine. So his points in stock just went up by about half the audience at least. He did retire from the Air Force, and then he entered the ministry, and he became an international mission board ministry, as did Kathy. And they served here as pastor at Central Baptist from 1990 until 2005, where he went back and wound up pastoring the same church where he grew up as a young man. So it's got to be a great encouragement to be able to see the folks that you grew up with and now to be helping them in their walk with the Lord. He completed his doctorate shortly before he left Okinawa and is now Dr. John Preston Joslin. And he is here with us through the beginning of August. And again, any further ado, if you'll join me in welcoming Pastor Joslin as he shares the message of the Lord with us.
That was so hard for me to not do when I first went back to the States after being here, because of enjoying the fellowship here for all those years. It's good to see you this morning. Last night I had a long speech ready, but as soon as I got up I was overcome with emotion and could not say much. But it was such a great time last night at Peter's with all of you to enjoy that fellowship. It took us completely by surprise. In talking with Max and I, to ask a question, I guess in a roundabout way, and Max had sort of indicated that maybe someone else would be there, and so I thought maybe one other couple, maybe, I wasn't sure, maybe Amy. And then when we drove up, I saw Brother Tim, as he pulled in just before us, and so I thought, well, maybe Max has a little meeting with the leadership of the church. So I was ready to see maybe 2 or 3 more couples. And then when we walked up and saw all you dear folks there in the restaurant, it was just a very emotional thing for us to be able to be welcomed back to Okinawa. It's been over 6 years. We have dreamed of this day when we could come back and just share with you. But for this period of time, summertime, we get on the front porch and do our devotionals. The wintertime, it's inside. But we will read the scriptures, the devotionals, and then we will offer up to the Lord in prayer the needs that are on our hearts. Central has been on our hearts since the day we left. So we've been praying for Central and for the ministry all during that time. And it's good to see that you are so faithful to the Lord. Now, we don't want to take all day here, but I do want Kathy to come and just share her heart with you, because she's the major part of anything we do.
Well, it is just wonderful to be back here. We are so excited, and it's just great to be in Okinawa and see all of you. You have just welcomed us so graciously, and you're such dear, dear people, and it is so good to see all of you. And as John said, we do pray for you, and we're just excited what the Lord is doing and how He is blessing you. And I know that you are faithful servants of His, and I know that wonderful things are ahead for each of you. And we just love you in the Lord, and just appreciate you so much. And just thank you for welcoming us in such wonderful and such a gracious spirit. And we just look forward to our God's on today. Thank you so much.
I'd like to ask you to turn your Bibles to the book of Galatians. I'll be preaching for the next 4 Sundays. You've had some great preaching these past Sundays with Brother Dave Rosenberg. In fact, through the power of Facebook, I've been able to see Damani Sensei as he preached in baptism. I was able to watch David Turley as he was preaching, because you have that on Facebook. And then I was able to watch Brother Dave as he preached the Father's Day sermon. A great job, and so I appreciate the fine work that they have done. But I want us to look at the book of Galatians for the next 4 Sundays, and it's a great book because the Apostle Paul used the writings to the churches in Galatia to encourage them after they had struggled through a lot of things. In fact, when you read much of Paul's writings, Paul wrote his letters to encourage the saints wherever he had been able to minister to. So today I want us to look at a few verses in Galatians chapter 1, and beginning with verse 10. Galatians chapter 1, verse 10. For am I now seeking the favor of men or of God, or am I striving to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ. For I would have you know, brethren, that the gospel which was preached by me is not according to man. For I neither received it from man, nor was I taught it. But I received it through a revelation of Jesus Christ. For you have heard of my former manner of life in Judaism, how I used to persecute the church of God beyond measure, and tried to destroy it. I was advancing in Judaism beyond many of my contemporaries among my countrymen, being more extremely zealous for my ancestral tradition. But when he who had set me apart even from my mother's womb and called me through his grace was pleased to reveal his Son to me, that I might preach him among the Gentiles, I did not immediately consult with flesh and blood, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me. But I went away to Arabia and returned once more to Damascus. So I want us to think for a few moments on the subject of pleasing God, because this is what Paul is saying to the saints, the churches of Galatia, how that we might please God in a way that would honor Him. But one of my heroes in music, as is many others, and it becomes even more so as he is now 102 years old and still singing just as strong as ever, the praises of God, is George Beverly Shea. I read his biography not long ago, and in that he gave some illustrations of some of the things that he had done in his journey in Christianity and serving the Lord, working with Billy Graham and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. He talked about how that he and a friend had auditioned for a very lucrative position in music. And it was one that he thought he would like to have. And of course his friend did want that. But he said that as he got into that and he began to see the lyrics that were very questionable for a Christian person to sing, he said at that point he decided to turn down the offer of this position for which he was being considered. He said about his friend who was hired for that position, he said gradually he seemed to drift further and further away from the church. So it was a turning point for both of us. We make decisions in life, and the decisions that we make are turning points for us. May it be that the decisions that we make will be turning points that will turn us more toward Jesus and live our lives more faithfully for Him. So in thinking about pleasing God, I want us to think about three things. One is that pleasing God produces a confession. Produces a confession because we read in verses 10, 11, and 12, Paul is indicating that in his writings. First of all, it is a confession of a servant of Christ. Paul is not making a confession of sin, and usually that's what we think of when we experience the idea of a confession. But Paul's not confessing of sin, but he's confessing the desire to want to please God with every fiber of his being. Paul is wanting to please Christ. Now, in this world, we often want to please men. I think I was supposed to turn something on here. All right, now I've got that on. In this life, though, we often want to please men and women. We want to please those of the world. That is something that seems to be down in us. But Paul says, in the process of life, when we please God, then we're going to be able to relate to human beings. That's what Paul is saying. He wants to please Christ in everything that he does. He says, for I am not seeking the favor of men or of God, and question mark. Or am I striving to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ. He is serving God, pleasing God, through being a bondservant of Jesus Christ. Now, in those times there, Paul surely would have been like some of the people are today. We say, Paul, now listen, times have changed. These are different days than they were back when you were a young person. And so you've got to change with the things that are going on in today. And things change constantly. It doesn't matter who we are or where we are. Things have changed from the youth. Things have changed from our younger days, and some who are a little bit older than others. Things have changed. Things constantly change. But the one thing that Paul is wanting to impress upon them is that our relationship with God does not change and go backwards. It gets better every day. There is a song we used to sing years ago, and the children do sing. Every day with Jesus is sweeter than the day before. That's